Well, hello and happy Labor Day weekend. Sorry to bother you now, but you're probably not even watching this yet, so it's okay. Um, it was fantastic to see all of you in your videos, to meet you virtually. It was very nice. I think it's interesting that so many of you have not taken an online course before. And let me just say, I've taught a couple of different online courses, but typically it's in the summer where I'm like jamming all this information down your throat really quickly. So I'm trying to back that off a bit. Um, let's see how it works out, okay? I will encourage you always, always, as I said before, to stay in touch with me. Please never hesitate to email me or to text me if you need something. On that, I did open up a remind site, a remind site, and I posted it on the announcement page on Brightspace. And if you're interested in joining that, you may. You are not required to. It allows me to send you some reminders regarding due dates and things like that. All of these will be on Brightspace, so you don't feel like you have to. It's just sometimes much easier and faster to get through to people when it comes directly to their phone. Again, I'm going to leave that entirely up to you. I've actually never used that with an online course, um, but it works out pretty well for my face-to-face classes, so I thought I would give it a shot and we'll see how it works. Okay, so now just a couple of reminders about things that you need to do this week. We're going to begin working toward the rhetorical appeal of a found argument. Not rhetorical appeal, rhetorical analysis. We're going to look at the rhetorical appeals inside a found argument. In order to do that, there's a couple of things that you need to do first. I posted a link to the Writing Commons last week that talks about different rhetorical appeals and what we mean when we talk about argument. We argue all the time. Okay, internally we argue. Do I really want to go trim those hedges today, or would I rather stay in and clean the floor? Two fabulous options, obviously. So we're constantly weighing pros and cons for ourselves. We engage in arguments with our friends, with our family, with our peers, colleagues regularly, whether it's over political policy or where to have lunch. But the bottom line is we exercise some of the same strategies when making those arguments. The number one thing we do is identify and have some knowledge of our audience. Okay, so making an appeal or an argument or a plea to a parent or a significant other might afford you some different opportunities because you know those people very well. So you might be able to prey on some of their sympathies in different ways. You might be able to pull some different information to the surface. Certainly knowing your audience helps you in those cases. By the same token, if you're appealing to a more, let's say, generic audience, a more general audience, you're going to have to work a little differently to, number one, make a connection with that audience, but number two, provide evidence and support that adequately promotes your position in an educated, logical, developed manner. And that's the audience that we're feeding with this in this class for the most part. You'll have the opportunity to identify and fine-tune an audience later in the semester, but from the beginning we're going to look and say, okay, if we have general readership, what do we need to do to make our arguments sound, to make them valid, to make them effective? And how do we do that in a way that is also incredibly well written, right? So we want to have all of the components in place. I'm assuming, since this is Comp 2, that you've either taken Comp 1 or you tested out of it. In either case, you are, of course, prepared for this class, and we'll work through it together. In terms of the writing skills as well, I'll be looking at your drafts. I will be giving you feedback on all of your drafts. You're going to be giving one another feedback on your papers. So we're going to have that constant interaction and engagement. But you also need to come to the table with some of your strongest writing skills. Some of you have probably already figured out through your lifetime of writing that you're really good at description, or you're really good at narrative, or you're really good at analysis. So I'm going to ask you to really play up those strengths when you write your essays. Every paper, you might have a single purpose, but how you achieve that purpose Depends on you, on your audience, and on what you want to, how you want to say what you need to say. Okay, so in order to get there, before we begin writing arguments, we being you, you have to examine some other arguments. Okay, so we're going to analyze some found arguments, and I draw on this very, very simple model to help you break down an argument. All right. So now this is not you agreeing or disagreeing with what a writer has to say. This is you saying, hey, this is what this writer said. This is how he said it. This is the type of appeal that's being used. This works well. This language is a little bit harsh. This language is too benign, whatever it may be. But that's you analyzing what the writer has done, not whether or not you agree with his or her position. At this point, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you agree or disagree with his position. I want you to say, wow, he makes a really good argument. He provides really good support. He organizes his essay well. This is what you're doing. It's like a movie review, only it's an argument review. In order to do that, you can look at this PAPL model that I have posted and linked to in the announcement page. All right, so it gives you a chance to look at the writer's purpose, the intended audience, the presentation. Is it a blog? Is it an article for the New York Times? Is it an argument from an academic journal? Where does it appear? Because of course that affects things. The evidence, what type of support is given? Is it primarily logical or statistical appeals? Is it largely grounded in persuasive appeals that are let's say primarily emotional, or is it largely rooted in the credibility of the author, and how does he or she establish that? So that's the E part of PAPL. And then L is the language. Okay, so then you can look at the tone, the organization, and you can evaluate that. I've linked to that. I've also given you 3 articles that I'd like for you to read. I want you to read all of them actively, annotate, take notes, not just as a reader, but as a writer. Okay, so take a look at those, read them, take some, oh, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Take some notes so that you know what's in there and how effective it's done. Again, not whether or not you agree with what the writer is saying, but how well he or she presents his or her position. Then eventually this week, you're going to choose one of those articles to write a rhetorical analysis on. So also look into the rhetorical analysis module. Okay, I've been talking for a lot already. I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'll be back with you probably on Tuesday to talk about that rhetorical analysis. Stay current on Brightspace. Make sure you read all 3 of those articles. I've also opened a discussion board where you can open the conversation on those particular articles. I'm going to look at kind of no, that didn't make sense. Streamlining what we're doing. So maybe, the one day a week that we'll have a discussion posting due, the one day that you'll have some homework in the form of whatever it is I've decided for that week, and then the day that a draft is due. So stay posted on Brightspace and have yourselves a fantastic and safe holiday weekend.